Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. There are love stories that transcend time, relationships that redefine devotion, and partnerships that change the course of history. But among all the beautiful unions that have ever existed on this earth, there is one that stands apart, one that was blessed by the heavens themselves. This is the story of a woman whose name brings tears to the eyes of those who know her, whose sacrifice shaped the very foundation of Islam, and whose love became a sanctuary for the greatest man who ever walked this earth. Tonight, as you settle into the comfort of your rest, let us journey back 14 centuries to the golden sands of Mecca, to a time when the world was cloaked in darkness and ignorance, to witness a love that would illuminate the path for all of humanity. This is the story of Hazrat Khadija bint Khuwaylid. May Allah be pleased with her, the woman who Allah Himself sent greetings of peace upon, the woman who would become the very first believer in Islam, and the woman whose unwavering faith would hold up the pillars of this blessed religion when it was nothing more than a whisper in the desert wind. Close your eyes and imagine the bustling streets of Mecca, where merchants call out their wares, where the scent of frankincense mingles with the dust of traveled roads, where caravans stretch across the horizon laden with silks and spices. In this world of commerce and trade, there lived a woman whose reputation preceded her like the morning sun. They called her At-Tahira, the Pure One, and her name was Khadija. Long before Islam graced the Arabian Peninsula with its light, Khadija bint Khuwaylid had already carved her place in history. Born around the year 5 in the noble clan of Banu Asad, a branch of the mighty Quraysh tribe, she was blessed with a lineage that commanded respect. Her father, Khuwaylid ibn Asad, was a successful merchant, a man whose caravans traversed the ancient trade routes that connected Arabia to Syria, Yemen, and beyond. From him, Khadija inherited not only wealth, but something far more valuable: the wisdom of commerce, the art of fair dealing, and an unshakable sense of integrity. But life, as it often does, brought sorrow alongside blessing. Khadija's parents passed away when she was still young, leaving her to navigate the treacherous waters of a male-dominated society. Yet, where others might have faltered, Khadija flourished. She took control of her father's business empire and expanded it beyond anyone's imagination. Her caravans became the largest in all of Mecca, their cargo greater in volume than all the other merchants' goods combined. Imagine that for a moment. In a time when women were considered little more than property, when baby girls were buried alive in the desert sand, here was a woman who commanded an economic empire, who employed men, who made decisions that affected the lives of hundreds. But wealth alone did not define Khadija. What truly set her apart was the luminosity of her character, a radiance that could not be dimmed by all the gold in Arabia. She was known for her generosity, opening her hands to feed the hungry, to clothe those who shivered in the cold desert nights, to provide dowries for young women whose families could not afford to see them married. She supported her relatives financially, never turning away a request for help. More remarkably, according to historical accounts, in a society that bowed before hundreds of stone idols, Khadija was among those rare individuals known as Hanifs, monotheists who recognized the futility of idol worship. It is said that she never prostrated before a statue, never burned incense to a lifeless deity. It was as if her soul was waiting, preparing itself for the truth that would soon illuminate her life. Her beauty was renowned, her nobility unquestioned, and her wealth was the subject of envy. Proposals came from the most prestigious men in Arabia, powerful chiefs and wealthy merchants who saw in her the perfect wife. According to most historical accounts, Khadija had been widowed before, having experienced the pain of loss. These experiences had taught her to be discerning, to look beyond status and wealth to the content of a person's character. So she declined them all, these men who measured their worth in camels and gold, choosing instead to remain independent, to wait for something her heart could not yet name. The year was 595. According to the most widely accepted historical accounts, Khadija was approximately 40 years old, a woman of maturity and wisdom, her soul refined by life's trials into something precious and rare. She was preparing a trading caravan to Damascus, the journey that every merchant knew brought both opportunity and peril. She needed someone to manage this expedition, someone she could trust with her livelihood, someone whose integrity was beyond question. It was Abu Talib, the noble and respected uncle of a young man named Muhammad, who approached Khadija with a proposal. There was someone, he said, someone whose reputation for honesty had earned him a title no wealth could buy. Al-Amin, the trustworthy. Even at the age of 25, Muhammad ibn Abdullah was known throughout Mecca as a man who never lied, who never broke a promise, who carried himself with a dignity that seemed to belong to another realm entirely. Khadija had heard of this Muhammad, who in Mecca had not. He was an orphan, yes, raised first by his grandfather Abdul Muttalib and then by his uncle Abu Talib. But there was something about him that captured people's attention. His face, they said, was more beautiful than the full moon, radiating a light that seemed to come from within. His character was beyond reproach. Years later, when the tribes of Mecca would quarrel over who should have the honor of placing the black stone in its position during the rebuilding of the Kaaba, it would be Muhammad they would turn to, trusting his wisdom to settle their dispute peacefully. But even at this younger age, his reputation for honesty and trustworthiness was unmatched. Khadija agreed to employ him, offering double the commission she usually paid her agents. But she did something else, something that would prove crucial. She assigned her loyal servant, Maysara, to accompany Muhammad on this journey. "Watch him," she instructed. "Tell me everything you observe." The caravan set off across the desert, and Maysara watched. He watched as Muhammad conducted business with an honesty that left traders amazed. He watched as this young man showed kindness to the poor they encountered along the way. He watched as Muhammad would seek shade under a tree to pray. And Maysara saw something that made his heart tremble. A monk who had lived in those regions for decades approached him one day and said, "Only prophets rest under this tree. No one else has ever stopped in its shade." When the caravan returned to Mecca, its profits exceeded all expectations. Khadija's investment had multiplied far beyond the normal returns. But it was not the gold and silver that captured her attention when Maysara entered her presence. It was his words, his description of the young man she had employed. Everything Maysara reported confirmed what Khadija's intuition had been whispering to her heart. This was no ordinary man. This was someone special, someone chosen. And in that moment, a decision formed in Khadija's heart, a decision that would change the course of human history. In the society of Mecca, women did not propose marriage. It simply was not done. But Khadija was not like other women, and Muhammad was not like other men. She sent her dear friend, Nafisa bint Munya, to discreetly inquire about Muhammad's thoughts on marriage. Nafisa found Muhammad and asked him, "What prevents you from marrying?" Muhammad's response was simple and telling, "I do not have the means to marry." "But what if," Nafisa continued, "you were invited to marry someone with wealth, beauty, nobility, and compatibility? Would you accept?" When Muhammad asked who this person might be, Nafisa revealed, Khadija, the daughter of Khuwaylid. Muhammad's face showed surprise. Khadija, the princess of Mecca, the woman every powerful man sought? But how could this be possible? He asked. Leave that to me, Nafisa replied with a knowing smile. Would you accept? And Muhammad, the embodiment of humility despite his noble character, said simply, I would accept. Picture the scene when Khadija herself confirmed the proposal to Muhammad. Here was a woman of 40, wealthy beyond measure, sought after by the most powerful men in Arabia. And she was choosing a 25-year-old orphan who had nothing in terms of worldly wealth. But Khadija saw what others were blind to. She saw a soul polished to perfection by tribulation, a character refined by hardship into something more valuable than all the treasures of the earth. She saw integrity, truthfulness, gentleness, and a light that emanated from his very being. The wedding was arranged with a simplicity that reflected Muhammad's character. His uncle Abu Talib stood to speak on his behalf, delivering words that captured the essence of his nephew. My nephew, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, has no equal among the young men of Quraysh. In honor, nobility, wisdom, and virtue, he surpasses them all. True, his wealth is limited, but wealth is nothing more than a fleeting shadow, something that comes and goes. By Allah, his rank and stature will only grow greater and higher from this point on. The dowry was set at 20 camels, and the marriage was sealed. The blessed union between Khadija and Muhammad was not built on worldly considerations, but on something far more lasting: mutual respect, recognition of character, and a deep spiritual connection that transcended the superficial concerns of society. Imagine their home, this sanctuary they built together. It was filled with a peace that seemed to emanate from the very walls. They were blessed with children, 6 in all according to most authentic sources. Their first son, Qasim, from whom Muhammad would receive his kunya, Abu al-Qasim. Then came their beloved daughters, Zainab, whose very name meant the ornament of her father, then Ruqayya, then Kulthum, and finally Fatima, who would become known as Fatima al-Zahra, the Radiant One, the Lady of Paradise. Their youngest son, Abdullah, was also born to them, given the beautiful titles At-Tayyib, the Good, and Ainah At-Tahir, the Pure. Though their sons did not survive childhood, passing away in their tender years, each daughter would grow to embody the values of their remarkable parents. Their home welcomed others too. Young Ali ibn Abi Talib, Muhammad's cousin, came to live with them when he was around 5 or 6 years old, to ease the financial burden on his father Abu Talib during a time of economic difficulty in Mecca. Khadija raised him with love, nurturing the boy who would one day be called the gateway to knowledge. When the first revelation came years later, Ali would be around 10 years old, and he would become one of the very first to accept Islam. For 15 years, Khadija and Muhammad lived in marital bliss. They were partners in every sense, supporting each other, bringing out the best in one another. And then, in the 40th year of Muhammad's life, everything changed. Muhammad had always been contemplative, always seeking meaning beyond the materialism and idol worship that consumed Meccan society. As he approached his 40th year, he began experiencing vivid dreams, dreams that came true with the clarity of daylight. These visions drew him to solitude, to a cave called Hira, perched on a mountain about 2 miles from Mecca. There, in that small rocky hollow barely 4 meters long and 1.5 meters wide, he would spend days and nights in meditation and worship of the one true God. And Khadija? She supported him completely. She prepared provisions for him, food and water for his stays in the cave. Sometimes, even though she was in her 50s by then, she would make the arduous climb up the rocky mountain path herself to bring him what he needed. When Muhammad saw her approaching from his place high on the mountain, he would descend halfway to meet her, to spare her the difficulty of the full climb. Their faces would light up upon seeing each other, and in those moments, even in silence, their love spoke volumes. Khadija never complained. She never asked him to abandon his spiritual seeking, never burdened him with demands for more of his time or attention. She understood, in a way few people ever understand their spouses, that this was important, that something momentous was approaching, that her husband was being prepared for something extraordinary. Then came the night that split history in two. It was during Ramadan, in the year 610, during the quiet hours before dawn, when the world sleeps and the veil between the earthly and the divine grows thin. Muhammad was alone in the Cave of Hira when the angel Jibril appeared before him in his true form, vast and awe-inspiring, filling the horizon. The angel's voice commanded, "Read." Muhammad, who had never learned to read, who had never been taught letters or scripts, responded, "I cannot read." The angel seized him, embraced him with a force that felt as though it would squeeze the very life from his body, then released him and commanded again, "Read." Again, Muhammad replied, "I cannot read." Twice more this happened, the angel's embrace overwhelming, terrifying, until finally the angel spoke the words that would begin the Quran. "Read in the name of your Lord, who created man from a clinging substance. Read, and your Lord is the most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man that which he knew not." Muhammad fled from the cave, his heart pounding with a fear he had never known. Halfway down the mountain, he heard a voice calling his name. He looked up and saw Jibril in his true form, so vast that he filled the entire horizon, no matter which direction Muhammad turned his gaze. "O Muhammad," the angel declared, "you are the messenger of Allah, and I am Jibril." Trembling, overwhelmed, Muhammad rushed home. When he arrived, he could barely speak. "Zamiluni, Zamiluni," he cried out. Cover me, cover me." And Khadija did. She wrapped him in a cloak, held him close, stroked his head, and waited for his trembling to subside. Here was the moment when Khadija's true character shone brightest. Her husband had just experienced something that could have been interpreted as madness, as possession by spirits, as any number of things that would have caused most people to flee. But not Khadija. When Muhammad finally calmed enough to explain what had happened, he said with lingering fear, "I am afraid something terrible may happen to me." Listen carefully to Khadija's response, for it reveals the depths of her wisdom and the strength of her faith. She did not dismiss his fears. She did not minimize what he had experienced. Instead, she spoke with absolute certainty, with a conviction that came from years of observing his character. "Never. By Allah, Allah will never disgrace you. You maintain the ties of kinship. You speak the truth. You help the poor and the destitute. You serve your guests generously and assist those who are afflicted by calamity. You uphold good character. Our Creator will never forsake you, and He will never let you be harmed." Think about what this means. Khadija had no scripture to reference, no previous prophet to compare this experience to. She had only her faith in Allah and her intimate knowledge of her husband's character. And on these two pillars alone, she built her conviction that this was divine, not demonic. That Allah, in His infinite wisdom and mercy, would never allow a man of such virtue to be led astray. But Khadija did more than offer words of comfort. She took action. she brought Muhammad to her cousin, Waraqah ibn Nawfal, an elderly Christian scholar who had studied the scriptures of Judaism and Christianity. When Waraqah heard Muhammad's account, when he learned of the angel's appearance and the words that had been revealed, tears filled his old eyes. "This is An-Namus," he declared, "the same angel that was sent to Moses. You are the awaited prophet. I wish I were young again, for your people will drive you out. And if I am alive to see that day, I will support you with all my strength." And thus, in that defining moment, Khadija became the first person in all of creation to believe in Islam. Before Abu Bakr, before Ali, before any other soul declared their faith in the oneness of Allah and the prophethood of Muhammad, there was Khadija. She did not hesitate. She did not ask for proof. She did not need miracles or signs. Her faith in Allah and her knowledge of her husband's character were enough. From that blessed night forward, Khadija's role transformed. She was no longer merely the wife of Muhammad. She became the wife of the Prophet of Allah, the supporter of Islam's messenger, and the foundation upon which the early Muslim community would be built. And she embraced this role with every fiber of her being. There is a saying that captures the significance of her contribution. Islam did not rise except through Ali's sword and Khadija's wealth. Think about that. When Islam was nothing but a few believers meeting in secret, when every convert risked everything by declaring their faith, when persecution threatened to snuff out this divine light before it could truly begin to glow, it was Khadija's wealth that sustained them all. She spent everything. The vast fortune she had built through decades of trade, the inheritance from her father, the profits from countless caravans, she poured it all into the service of Islam. She bought the freedom of enslaved Muslims who were being tortured for their faith. She fed the growing community of believers. She provided for the families who were driven from their homes and livelihoods for accepting Islam. She supported the Prophet's mission financially so that he could devote himself entirely to receiving and delivering Allah's message, without worrying about providing for his family. When Jibreel descended with a message from Allah specifically for Khadija, conveying Allah's own greetings of peace to her, it was not merely as an honor, though it was the highest honor any human could receive. It was recognition. Allah was acknowledging the service she was rendering, the sacrifices she was making, the crucial role she was playing in establishing His religion on earth. Her home became the cradle of Islam. Within those walls, the Quran was recited for the first time to human ears. Within those walls, the first prayers were performed. Within those walls, the early believers would gather, finding safety and community. The house where Khadija lived with the Prophet became known among later generations as the most frequented place of revelation in all of Mecca. But Khadija's contribution was not merely financial or logistical. She provided something that cannot be measured in gold: unwavering emotional and spiritual support. The Prophet would face rejection, mockery, insults, and even physical attacks. His own people, the Quraysh, whom he had lived among his entire life, turned against him. They called him a liar, a madman, a sorcerer. They threw garbage at him. They spat at him. They plotted to kill him. And when he would return home, wounded in spirit, if not always in body, there was Khadija. She would listen to him, comfort him, remind him of his mission's importance, assure him that Allah was with him. She was his sanctuary, his place of peace in a storm of persecution. Is it any wonder that the Prophet would later say, when reminded of her years after her death, that even then his heart overflowed with love for her? Khadija raised Fatima, who would become the Lady of Paradise, teaching her daughter the values of faith, patience, sacrifice, and strength. She nurtured Ali, who would grow to become the fourth caliph and the gateway to the Prophet's knowledge. She also influenced Zubair ibn al-Awwam, one of the 10 companions promised paradise, through her wisdom and guidance. Her influence rippled outward, touching lives and shaping the future leaders of the Islamic community. 7 years after the first revelation, when Islam had grown from a handful of believers to a community that threatened the very foundations of Meccan society, the leaders of Quraysh convened. They had tried everything to stop Muhammad and his message. They had offered him wealth, kingship, the most beautiful women, anything he desired. If he would only stop preaching, he refused. They had tortured his followers. The believers only grew stronger. They had mocked and insulted him. He continued his mission with unshakable resolve. So they devised a new strategy, one of cruel sophistication, complete social and economic boycott. They drew up a treaty and hung it in the Kaaba, declaring that no one should marry anyone from the clan of Banu Hashim, the clan that protected Muhammad. No one should conduct business with them. No one should sell them food or buy anything from them. Any interaction beyond the absolutely necessary was forbidden. This boycott was not just against Muslims. It was against the entire clan of Banu Hashim and their allied clan Banu Muttalib, because these tribes, even those members who had not accepted Islam, refused to hand over Muhammad to his enemies. So Muslims and non-Muslims alike from these clans were forced to retreat to a ravine on the outskirts of Mecca called Shib Abi Talib, the Valley of Abu Talib. Imagine the scene. Imagine Khadija, who had lived her entire life in comfort and luxury, who had known the finest foods and the softest beds, who had commanded servants and lived in one of the most beautiful houses in Mecca, now confined to a rocky ravine. The boycott lasted 3 years. 3 years of starvation, of thirst, of watching children cry from hunger, of eating tree bark and dead leaves boiled in water just to have something in their stomachs. The cries of hungry children could be heard from outside the valley, and Abu Jahl and the other leaders of Quraysh would respond with mocking laughter, delighting in the suffering they were inflicting. Sometimes at night, sympathetic relatives would try to sneak food into the valley. Khadija's own cousin, Hakim ibn Hizam, risked his life multiple times to bring supplies to her. But these deliveries were rare, and when they came, the small amounts of food had to be divided among so many desperate people. Khadija was in her 60s during this trial, an age when she should have been resting, being cared for, enjoying the fruits of a lifetime of hard work. Instead, she endured conditions that would break younger, stronger people. She watched her beloved daughter, young Fatima, go hungry. She saw the Prophet's face lined with worry and pain. She felt the effects of malnutrition on her own aging body. Yet through it all, through every hardship and privation, Khadija never complained. She never asked the Prophet to give up his mission to end their suffering. She never expressed regret for the wealth she had spent on Islam, wealth that could have ensured her comfort for the rest of her life. Instead, she prayed. She turned to Allah with a heart full of faith, trusting that He who had placed them in this trial would also bring them through it. And she supported others. She comforted the frightened children. She encouraged the women who were struggling. She held firm in her faith, and her steadfastness became a pillar for the entire community to lean upon. The Prophet himself would later reflect on these years, on how Khadija's presence, her faith, and her love sustained him through the darkest period of his mission. After 3 years, the boycott finally ended. Not through the compassion of its architects, but because even some among the Quraysh grew ashamed of what they were doing. According to the traditional accounts found in early biographical sources, the treaty that had been hung in the Kaaba was found to have been eaten by termites, with only the words, Bismika Allahumma, in your name, O Allah, remaining intact. Taking this as a sign, several leaders of the Quraysh moved to end the boycott, and the Muslims were finally allowed to return to their homes. But the damage had been done. The years of hardship had taken their toll, particularly on the elderly Abu Talib and Khadija. Both had sacrificed their health, their comfort, and ultimately their remaining years for the sake of Islam and the protection of the Prophet. It was the 10th year after the first revelation, the year 619 of the Common Era. The boycott had ended, but Khadija's health had been irreversibly damaged by the years of deprivation. She fell ill, and despite the Prophet's constant care and attention, her condition deteriorated. Picture the scene, if you can bear the sadness of it. The Prophet of Allah, the man chosen to receive the final divine revelation, the one who would be described as a mercy to all the worlds, sitting beside his wife's bed. He placed his hand beneath her head, offering what comfort he could. He prayed for her, begging Allah to ease her suffering. Khadija had been his companion for 25 years. She had been there when he was simply Muhammad, the orphaned young man known for his honesty. She had been there when he became a prophet, bearing the weight of divine revelation. She had believed in him when the entire world rejected him. She had spent her fortune, her health, her very life in support of his mission. According to the traditions that have come down to us, the Prophet's heart was heavy with sorrow at being unable to provide her the comfort she once knew. Tears streamed from his blessed eyes. But Khadija, even in her final moments, sought to comfort him rather than herself. She reminded him that the greatest wealth was not of this world, but the eternal happiness they would share in the hereafter. Can you imagine the love in that moment? The Prophet's grief at being unable to provide her worldly comfort, and Khadija's complete focus on eternal matters rather than temporal concerns. As her soul prepared to depart this earthly realm, we can imagine their final moments together filled with profound love and faith. The pain of separation was real, yet so too was the certainty of their reunion in paradise. In those last moments, Khadija's unwavering faith would have been a source of comfort, a reminder that this was not an ending, but a transformation. And then, in the blessed month of Ramadan, on the 10th day, Khadija bint Khuwaylid breathed her last. According to most historical accounts, she was around 65 years old. The first believer, the greatest supporter of Islam, the beloved wife of the Prophet, returned to her Lord. The Prophet himself descended into her grave, lying in it for a few moments as if reluctant to let her go. Then he helped lower her blessed body into the earth and smooth the soil over her grave with his own hands. She was buried in Jannat al-Mu'ala, in a place that would become sacred to Muslims for generations to come. With her death, the lamp of the Prophet's home was extinguished. The year of sorrow had begun. Just 1 month after Khadija's passing, Abu Talib also died, and the Prophet lost both his external protector and his internal source of comfort within the span of a few weeks. The Quraysh, emboldened by the removal of these two shields, intensified their persecution. They began physically attacking the Prophet, throwing filth on him, spitting at him, attempting to harm him in ways they would never have dared while Khadija and Abu Talib lived. Years passed, but the Prophet's love for Khadija never diminished. Indeed, it seemed to grow stronger with time, as if absence had polished his memories into diamonds of unforgettable beauty. He would mention her at every opportunity, his face softening at the sound of her name. He would send gifts to her relatives and friends, honoring her memory through his generosity to those she had loved. Whenever he slaughtered an animal for sacrifice, the best portions would be sent to Khadija's old friends. There's a beautiful, poignant story that illustrates the depth of the Prophet's continuing love. Years after Khadija's death, he was sitting with Aisha, his young wife, when a voice at the door reminded him of Khadija's voice. The Prophet immediately jumped up and rushed to the door, his face transformed by hope and longing. Though it wasn't Khadija, the resemblance in the voice had stirred his heart so powerfully that he couldn't help but respond. Aisha, watching this, felt a jealousy that any woman might understand. Here she was, young and alive, and her husband's heart was so filled with love for a woman who had been gone for years. Finally, one day, Aisha couldn't contain her feelings anymore. "O Messenger of Allah," she said, "has Allah not given you someone better than her?" The response she received was immediate and passionate. The Prophet replied, "No, Aisha, Allah has not given me anyone better than Khadija. When everyone denied me, she believed in me. When people withheld their wealth, she supported me with hers. When I was alone, she was my companion. When I was in difficulty, she consoled me, saying, 'Remain steadfast, and you will find the mercy of Allah.' No, Aisha, Allah has not given me anyone better than Khadija." Even Aisha, who had every reason to feel wounded by such words, later admitted that Khadija was the wife she felt most envious of, precisely because of the special place she held in the Prophet's heart. One day, sitting in the mosque in Medina, the Prophet drew 4 lines in the sand with a twig. His companions watched with curiosity. "Do you know what these are?" he asked them. The companions, in their humility, replied, "Allah and His Messenger know best." The Prophet looked at those 4 lines, and his voice, the most beautiful voice that ever existed, grew gentle with emotion. "The best of the women of paradise," he said, "are these 4. This hadith is narrated in authentic collections, including Musnad Ahmad. He counted them, naming each one. Maryam, the daughter of Imran; Asiya, the wife of Pharaoh; Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad. And then, his voice heavy with love and longing, and Khadija, bint Khuwaylid. From the accounts of those who were present, we understand that as he spoke her name, his eyes filled with emotion. The mere mention of her, even years after her death, touched his heart deeply. After the conquest of Mecca, when the Prophet returned victoriously to the city that had driven him out, people wondered where he would stay. Would he reclaim his old home? Would he accept the invitation of one of the many wealthy Muslims who now controlled Mecca? His answer surprised many. "Did Aqil leave us any house to stay in?" referring to his cousin who had inherited the family properties. But then he gave another instruction that revealed where his heart truly wanted to be. According to historical accounts, he ordered his tent to be set up beside the grave of Khadija in Jannat al-Mu'alla. There he stayed for nearly 2 weeks, until the Battle of Hunain called him away. Even in triumph, even surrounded by supporters and well-wishers, he chose to be near her, demonstrating the enduring nature of his love and loyalty. The angel Jibril had conveyed a message to Khadija through the Prophet while she still lived, as recorded in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Allah, the Lord of all creation, sent her greetings of peace and glad tidings of a palace made of pearls in paradise, a place where there would be neither hardship nor sorrow. This was the reward for a woman who had sacrificed everything, a house of perfection in exchange for the house she had given up on earth. So what made Khadija so special to the Prophet Muhammad? What elevated her to a position that no other woman, despite all their virtues, could quite reach in his heart? It was her faith when faith required everything. It was her certainty when certainty seemed like madness. It was her sacrifice when sacrifice meant giving up every worldly comfort. It was her love when love demanded courage in the face of overwhelming opposition. Khadija saw Muhammad not just as a husband, but as a prophet, not just as a man, but as Allah's chosen messenger. And she arranged her entire life around supporting that mission. She understood, in a way few humans ever understand anything, that they were not just husband and wife. They were partners in establishing Islam, partners in transforming human history, partners in a divine plan that was larger than both of them. She gave him the gift of unwavering belief. When he doubted himself, she believed. When the world rejected him, she accepted. When others mocked his message, she treasured every word. She was his first follower, his strongest supporter, his most trusted advisor, and his deepest love. She taught us that true strength is not about physical power, but about steadfastness in faith. That real wealth is not in what we possess, but in what we sacrifice for Allah's sake. That genuine love is not just emotion, but action, commitment, and sacrifice. For 25 years, Muhammad did not take another wife. This was not because of any Islamic ruling, as Islam had not yet been revealed during most of their marriage. It was simply because Khadija was enough. She fulfilled every need of his heart and soul. Only after her death, when he was alone and the Muslim community needed strategic alliances, did he marry again. And even then, even with younger wives, even with companions of great virtue and beauty, Khadija remained incomparable in his heart. The Prophet once said that if he could have lived during her time, if he could have changed anything about his life, what he wanted most was for Khadija to have lived longer, to have seen the triumph of Islam, to have enjoyed the reward of her sacrifices in this world as well as the next. Though this sentiment reflects his deep longing for her presence, we can understand from his words and actions after her death just how irreplaceable she remained in his heart. Khadija teaches us about the power of supportive partnership. She shows us what it means to believe in someone completely, to support their purpose with everything we have. She demonstrates that women can be strong, independent, intelligent, and devout all at once. She proves that sacrifice for Allah's sake is never wasted, that what we give up for His cause will be returned to us, multiplied beyond measure. Her story is a reminder to every husband to cherish and appreciate their wives, to remember their sacrifices, to honor their support. It's a lesson to every wife about the profound impact they can have, about how their faith and support can literally change the course of history. It's an inspiration to every believer that when we give everything for Allah's sake, He gives us back infinitely more. As we come to the end of this story, as you prepare to drift into sleep, let Khadija's example settle into your heart. Let it remind you that the greatest love stories are not just about romance. They're about faith, sacrifice, partnership, and devotion to something greater than ourselves. Khadija was the first to believe in Allah's final message to humanity. She was the first to sacrifice for Islam. She was the woman who held up the pillars of this religion when it was nothing more than a few people gathering in secret. And Allah honored her for it, sending her greetings of peace, promising her a palace in paradise, making her one of the 4 greatest women in all of human history. The Prophet, the messenger of Allah, the man chosen from all of mankind, said there was no one better than Khadija. Let that sink in. No one better. Not because of her wealth, though she was wealthy. Not because of her beauty, though she was beautiful. But because of her character, her faith, her sacrifice, and her love. As you close your eyes tonight, remember Khadija. Remember the woman who believed when believing was dangerous. Remember the woman who sacrificed when sacrifice meant everything. Remember the woman who loved so purely that her love became a sanctuary for the Prophet of Allah. May Allah be pleased with Khadija bint Khuwaylid. May He grant us even a fraction of her faith, her courage, and her devotion. And may He reunite her with her beloved in the highest levels of paradise, where they are together once more, where there is no separation, only eternal peace and joy. Before we part tonight, take a moment to reflect on this beautiful story. If it touched your heart, if it inspired you, if it brought you closer to understanding the sacrifices that built Islam, consider leaving a comment below sharing what moved you most about Khadija's story. Subscribe to our channel so you can continue to receive these stories that connect us to our beautiful Islamic heritage. And share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of what true love, true faith, and true sacrifice look like. May Allah fill your night with peace, your heart with faith, and your life with blessings. Until we meet again for another story from our rich Islamic tradition. Good night and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.